will help facilitate development of commercial businesses on 28 and down on Concord Street. And you know, as a homeowner and a parent with children in school, you know, our property taxes have risen. We pay fees, and I'm not blaming anybody for that. That's the reality of, you know, 2005, that these things are necessary. We're going to get to a point where we have to develop our infrastructure, schools, police stations, so forth. The taxpayers are getting to a point where they're not going to be able to afford anymore. So it has to be our #1 priority. In my opinion, that water treatment facility, which will not only alleviate severe problems that a lot of people in Martins Pond have, but also in the development of a commercial base or a larger commercial base in North Reading. And once that commercial base grows, either it's easier to go to a dual tax rate, which will also help ease property taxes on the average homeowner in town.
Mr. Tardino?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on the dual tax rate. The dual tax rate has been very effective for many towns. Burlington in particular has a dual tax rate. I don't believe that it is appropriate for North Reading. And it's not appropriate for North Reading really because unlike these other towns that have a large tax base of companies that are based outside of the town, we really are a town of small businessmen, small companies owned by North Reading residents. And a huge percentage of our businesses are owned by North Reading residents. So to have a dual tax rate will put an extra burden on North Reading residents. Additionally, our particular, the particular businesses we have here in North Reading are very involved in the community. They're very big contributors to from Ipswich River Park to the many youth sports and youth activities that go on here, and we would be adding an extra burden to them. So as a general rule, I'm not in favor of the dual tax rate.
We're getting to the end of this. I have 2 more questions, and if we answer them fairly quickly, we can get through this and still finish with this part by 8:30, especially this one, which I think probably has a pretty straightforward answer. And I'll ask you, Mr. Tardino, first. Do you support an appropriately priced pay-as-you-throw trash policy?
I actually believe that the trash ought to be part of the tax base. I think that you know what happens is that by not being part of the tax, because I'm a CPA, so you know my first thoughts always go to taxes and you know income taxes, and not being part of the tax base, it's not deductible as taxes paid by the individuals, and I think that it is it really belongs to be part of what is the tax base. Now, I have some problem with the way it's run currently. I feel that it is essentially unfair. It's unfair that I have 4 children. When we put out the trash, we put out, if it's a good week, we put out 2 barrels. But you know, there are many weeks where we put out 4 barrels, 3 or 4 barrels, because there were 6 of us in the house. And for me to be paying the same amount of money as a senior who's putting out 1 little bag of trash, I have a problem with that structure. And I've discussed it with many people, and I know that there are people that feel strongly about the issue. But the pay-as-you-go process, which is what we had, is actually, I think, a fairer process. I'm not really in favor of going back to that, though. I think that it has its own drawbacks.
Mr. Callahan?
Yeah. As a member of the Solid Waste Committee, we looked at that was one of the options we looked at just recently in coming forward with a new plan. And you know, as Phil pointed out, I too would like to see it in what we pay in taxes and have it just come right out of the budget. And that was the belief I held when I came to office 3 years ago. However, the reality of today is, if we were to do that, then we need to identify cuts. Do we want to take that out of the school budgets and take teachers out of the classroom? Do we want to take it out of the public safety budget and lay off police or firemen? In my mind, that's just what I was saying before. Is is I've grown to the position where, for me, the education, the money that we need for education and for public safety outstrips having to pay a fee. I know Mr. Murphy said he'll be glad to hear this, because we argued about it for a full year when I first got to the board. But, you know, we looked at the pay as you throw, and essentially the cost of it wasn't going to save the taxpayers anything. Yeah, even the people that were putting out, you know, 2 bags a week, it was $2.84, I believe, per bag. And when you factor in the fixed costs and so forth, so it wasn't the best plan. The rates it appears will probably stay the same. Tipping fees have gone down, but costs have risen. I think again it's priorities, and as much as I was never a fan of the fee program, the budget situation we're facing today, I think it's the most efficient way for the town to move forward and be able to provide the services we need to provide. And I'll save it for my rebuttal.
Well, actually, I was hoping if we could skip the rebuttals and go on to the last question.
I would like to add one thing then, if I may.
Okay.
In terms of,
Really lose here.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. I was going to save it. I thought I would have a minute, but it's in terms of the dual tax rate. I support the dual tax rate, and I'm cognizant that business owners that live in North Reading, their taxes on their business would rise more than they have, because the fact is, over each of the last 5 years, as the property values and the amount of money that's being paid by taxpayers, by homeowners, has risen, the majority of businesses' property taxes have actually dropped. They're paying less. What a dual tax rate would do would bring this back into balance of where it was. It is not going to put an added burden. That same person owns a business, they'll save the money in their own home in what they pay for their property taxes of the home that they own in North Reading. The other point is, most of the surrounding towns of North Reading have a dual tax rate, and their business tax rate is much higher. Their commercial tax rate is much higher than what we have in North Reading. And if we went to a dual tax rate, we would be able to bring it back into alignment between our homeowners and our commercial properties, and still keep the commercial rate lower than the communities that surround us. So we would still maintain our competitive advantage in attracting new businesses that want to come to a town that is bordered by 128 and 93.
Okay, Mr. Giardino, you get another minute back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, on either recycling or tax rate.
You know, I think to say that it brings it in line, of course, is that if the tax is falling on these businesses, that has to do with valuation. It does not have to do with that they're getting some special break. To raise taxes to say that you're not paying as much as me is the same as saying someone with a house that's valued lower than someone with a house that's valued higher should be double taxed so that they can pay the same amount. I don't think that there is any value in doing that, and I feel that it really kind of defeats the purpose of us trying to be fiscally responsible to increase the tax on residents. Other towns in this region do have a dual tax rate. Many do, but as I say, in places like Burlington, a huge percentage of those businesses in Burlington are from out-of-town residents, and the principle is to shift that burden. Here, we're increasing the burden. People are not going to see a tax break by the mere fact that you get a dual tax rate. Their taxes are not going to go down. Our revenues would go up, but taxes aren't going to go down. But I do think it's short-sighted to go with a dual tax rate here in this particular town in North Reading.
Okay, I want to go on to the last question. There's 3 questions here about sidewalks, favorite subject. And so I want to kind of put them in one question, because I get to mention the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters was involved in organizing a walk to school in October, but not all schools have sidewalks or sidewalks which are shoveled. And given issues such as increasing childhood obesity, what can the town do to increase the ability for people to walk more in safe places? And that's, I'm sorry, that goes to Mr. Callaghan.
Yeah, I've expressed my support for developing the walking trail through the Ipswich River Park and going over the Ipswich River with a small footbridge, and eventually to be able to add the fire lanes that run down along 62 back on the other side of the river. If you go down to I think it's called the Minuteman Regional Walkway, it goes down through Bedford and Lexington and into Arlington and so forth. My wife and I have taken advantage of that, going down there with our bikes and so forth, and it's a tremendous way in which to go out and get exercise in a great atmosphere. And I envision seeing something like that in North Reading. And you know, Brian Wood has been working on finding grants and helping develop that. And as a member of the board, when it's come before us, I have also expressed my support for it and have encouraged him in his efforts to find these grants. I think it would be beneficial to the town in terms of quality of life. In terms of sidewalks is one of the most expensive propositions that you can find, and unfortunately for us, priority-wise, in new developments they're being put in. You know, CPC insists upon them, and the developers have to put them in. The other parts of town, it becomes cost exorbitant for us to be able to do that. So I think we need to develop alternatives, such as being able to go through the Ipswich River Park and develop those types of walking trails. I'm a physical education teacher, and childhood obesity is something that in my profession we deal with that, and trying to get the kids to be more mobile, more athletic in terms of their movement, and developing healthy lifestyles. And that's also something that just building a sidewalk isn't going to do it. You need to educate the kids to the benefits of a healthy lifestyle, and that's something that you have to do in conjunction with the schools, which I'm sure they are already doing.
And Mr. Giardino, on the subject of sidewalks.
Thank you. I think that, you know, we need to make sidewalks mandatory in these building projects that come up. I think the Ipswich River project, the idea of connecting the downtown through the Ipswich River and creating these walking paths that Brian Woods has worked hard on and the Recreation Committee has worked hard in developing would be critical to answering this question. I think that there are some parts to North Reading where the roads won't lend themselves to that, and to see improvement there is probably going to be very difficult. But I think that certainly where we have road construction, where we have new developments, that is an area absolutely that should be encouraged. The idea of creating that kind of safe walkway for people. On the area of obesity, it clearly is a significant problem throughout the nation. I mean, we read the Time magazine, read all the magazines, and find that this is quite a problem. And I think it is something that is being done now through the schools and needs to be further educated with our kids. Further involvement in the youth programs, further involvement in the schools as well.
Mr. Callaghan?
Yes. Yes. Again, I'm in favor of sidewalks, but priority-wise, I just don't think we have the funds to be able to be putting in new sidewalks. I think the alternative of walking trails is a good way to make exercise avenues available to people. I also want to return to one very quickly to the dual tax rate. Revenues will not go up with a dual tax rate. What it does is it shifts the burden. 5 years ago, homeowners paid 84% of the revenues raised. We are limited to how much we could bring in revenues by Prop 2.5. 84% was paid by homeowners. 16% was paid by commercial. Today, we're paying 89% the homeowners, and it's 11%. What has happened is, that's true. Property values have risen. Commercial values have dropped. Not dropped, but they haven't risen as quickly. What this would do would bring back into line the percentage that each segment was paying towards the general revenue fund. The amount of revenues would not increase.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Giardino?
Well, the operative word that Mr. Gallagher used was shift the burden. And yeah, absolutely, it shifts the burden. But what the point is it shifts the burden from North Reading residents to North Reading residents. And I think that's the main point. And again,